Hello everybody and welcome to this video about the Sun card from my Everyday Enchantment Tarot. And here it is. I've taken a bit longer than usual to get this video together because I find it quite difficult. Just on a personal level, because this isn't really my card in the way that the Moon card was. The sun isn't really reflective of my nature necessarily, so I've had to really work on it more, and I did when I was writing about it, but not when I was creating it. This is one card that really created itself. It was the one that started it all off, really, the whole idea of this tarot, and so it is very important, and that was another reason why it's been quite difficult to make this, because it is such a pivotal card for me in terms of this deck. I will explain that now, but it is the one really that has no relation to the Rider-Waite version. I'll come back to that in a bit, but this card literally appeared for me. I've explained this in another video, but in case you haven't seen it, I'll just synopsize it for you again now. I was on a train journey, and when I'm on train journeys, I am usually now the only person in the carriage that is not plugged into something. i.e., I'm not looking at a phone, I'm not looking at a laptop, I'm not having headphones on, I'm not zoned out. I'm looking out of the window, or I'm looking around me at the people in the carriage. So while I was looking out of the window, I was going through the Midlands in England, and it was not a very inspiring landscape. It was very much an industrial area. There wasn't a lot of people around. It was just a lot of very grey buildings. A lot of them were derelict. There was a lot of graffiti, some of which was really wonderful, but generally it was an air of there was just a particular area that I was looking at thinking, oh no, it must be really awful to be here. How would you be inspired living here? And there was lots of rows of these terraced houses, but particularly there was just lots of industrial units, and it just looked very neglected and rather sad, and just the sort of epitome of how ugly humanity can make things look. And then suddenly this woman appeared. Now, I don't really know what she looked like in terms of this lady here. I think she might have been a bit older, but that wasn't the point. She just appeared in this cobbled road between two buildings. I don't know what they were. They could have been sort of garages or industrial units, I'm not sure, but it all looked really run down anyway. And she just appeared, not magically appeared, but she was just there as the train was going past. I just saw her. She was like a flame. I've said this before. She was wearing a sari. She was dressed in beautiful sun colours, and just going along with this sense of assurance and grace and beauty that was nothing to do with, I couldn't see her particular facial details or whatever. It was just the whole aspect of her. She was radiating such inner beauty, this glorious burst of life and light in the midst of what looked like a very sad area. And poof, I just saw her, and she just lit everything up. And of course the train moved on and I lost sight of her, but I'm using lots of sun analogies here, but it's true. She just burned herself into my consciousness. It was just, wow. No, this woman she's not defeated or influenced by her environment. She is radiantly herself. She is putting out that warm, positive, glowing energy wherever she is. That's just her. And that was so inspiring that I thought that she would be my first card. She just appeared, and thank you, whoever you are, for being such a wonderful, literally shining example. So that's how this card appeared, and so that's why it doesn't bear any direct correlation to the Rider-Waite version. As I've explained before in other videos, I like to draw as many parallels as I can. The one that I did make sure that I had was this scrolling scarfy thing in the Rider-Waite one. I made sure that her sari echoed that, so there was at least one cue, as well as the sun being in the card, there was at least one thing that could be related to. So I like to make the Everyday Enchantment deck as easy to read as possible for people who are already familiar with the Rider-Waite, the classic, the traditional versions of the tarot, so that you can think, oh yes, I recognise that, and so it just, you know, even if it's subconsciously, it brings it across. And I don't think I was ever going to be able to put the white horse and the small naked child riding it in an everyday version, but those are things that I wanted to echo, and even in the positioning of it on the card, they mirror each other somewhat in that scrolly thing. Before I go on to drawing other comparisons, I just wanted to say a few more personal things, because that's what this is all about. It's about me giving you personal insights into how this card came about, what it means, and what it means to me as the creator of it. Otherwise, you may as well just go and read the book that goes with it, and I'm not giving you anything extra. These videos are about giving you something from me, hopefully that will help you. Just broaden your experience of using the deck if you choose to work with it. Anyway, for me, going past this area on the train quite a few years ago now, then I found myself, by one of those extraordinary twists of fate, I found myself living somewhere that was exactly this. Now, when I'd been on that train journey, the thought of living somewhere that was like that was just, no, I can't do that. That would be so awful. How would I survive? But I found myself, just by circumstance, living somewhere that was this. It had cobbled alleyways between Victorian red brick terraced houses. And if you live in England, I'm not sure about Wales and Scotland so much. Yes, South Wales does have these kind of areas. I'm not sure about Scotland or Northern Ireland. I can't speak for those. But in terms of England, there are plenty of these Victorian red brick terraces, especially in the north of England, and that's where I ended up living, in one of these. Isn't that strange? After I basically formulated this card, I found myself actually living it and trying my very best to maintain this poise, this sense of inner shining, this sun-like energy. I tried every time I went into these alleyways, which I did find very oppressive and dismal, and they were very run down. There was usually lots of rubbish left around, and they did look neglected, and there was very little wild life or nature there. But I tried my best to focus on this card and to uphold that sense of finding beauty wherever I possibly could. So I ended up actually living this experience. It couldn't have been more strange to me to have that happen, because when I had the train experience, I was living in a much more rural area. I never thought this would happen, but it did. And I tried my best, because I like to be, I don't want to be a hypocrite. You know, if I'm creating this card, I want to think, well, I want to embody it as best as I can, even though it's not necessarily in my nature to do so. I want to try and bring that energy into my experience, and not to get overwhelmed by what I did find to be not a conducive environment for me. And yet again, this happened recently. Now I'm in a different area, through circumstance, through fated things that have happened, not through choice, but just through what has happened to me. I've ended up somewhere else, which is not quite like this, but there are bits of it which are very similar. And I found myself walking, as I often do, down the back of a row of shops, which I knew as a child, this row of shops, and since then they have become more and more sad and run down, neglected looking. And I walked down the back of them, and I thought, oh no, this is just so. I found myself sinking into that sense again of, oh, how can I can't bear this. This is such a horrible place. Look at all the things strewn everywhere. Look at the garage doors hanging off over there. Look at everything. And the first time I got into this headspace of doing it, a sparrowhawk just flew right in front of me. I thought, okay, you're forgetting the message of the card that you created here. So, pay attention. And then I stayed with it every time I walked down there. I stayed with the sun card. And then recently I forgot again. I slipped back into oh, I can't bear this. And then I suddenly just came to and thought, if somebody was watching, just say there was a train going past or a bus or anything, just say somebody was observing me. I am now, even though I'm not feeling it, I am now the sun lady, because I always go out, no matter how I'm feeling inside, I always go out wearing things covered in flowers. I live up to my name. Everything has got flowers on it. I coordinate my colours very carefully. I try and make whatever I'm looking, that's the thing that I consider that I've got most control over in my life, is how I present myself, no matter how my mood is or whatever. I'm always dressed in very, not these aren't my colours, but my equivalent of very bold, bright things, making a lot, taking a lot of care, making sure that I'm very well presented, because it's a matter of pride and wanting to bring some beauty into things. And I suddenly realised that even though I was falling into that old trap of, oh, this is so terrible, I suddenly realised that I was doing this. I was just being the sun. I am the sun, no matter what I was feeling like. And I just, I like the sun. I switched myself back on again and stopped being so dismal about my environment. And now, every time I walk anywhere that is less than nature filled, if you like, and is a real reflection of how humanity lets things turn very unpleasant looking, and so every time that happens, I will definitely be focusing on this card. And I hope that whatever your circumstances, if you ever find yourself in that kind of environment that you're thinking, no, I don't like it here, this is so oppressive, oh, look what humanity has done, isn't it dreadful? I hope that this card will give you some of that sort of strength, that radiance, that glow, to project it out and to be the sun, no matter how dark you find your situation or wherever you are. I hope that made sense. I think it did. Anyway, let's move on to some of the elements in the card. And before I do that, I just say that this Rider-Waite Sun card has perhaps more elements of my Magician card, in that there are three sunflowers, and there is a small person, although thankfully not a naked small person, in the Magician card, where there isn't in the Sun card. But I liked to, because of that, there is that sun energy in the Magician card, they share the same positive force, and I pick that up there, so I do reference it, but not directly in this one, because it had to be as I saw it. This was the actual catalyst for all the other cards in this deck, was this card. So let's just look at a few more elements, because I'm aware that time, as usual, is ticking on. I deliberately included a pigeon because pigeons are so ubiquitous in our urban environments, and I always pay attention to them. I always greet them. They have such a hard time. It's like, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think to the majority of people, they just zone them out. They're not even there. They may as well be a crisp packet blowing along the street. I feel extremely sorry for them, and I think they are very underrated in terms of their beautiful plumage. They are fantastic birds and really resilient, able to survive in all sorts of hostile environments. They adapt. There's a railway bridge not far from where I am now, and I see them nesting. They've made nests underneath there. They nest on top of all sorts of bizarre things that in the urban, they call it street furniture, which I find rather bizarre, but they nest on top of all sorts of street furniture, and they are incredibly versatile and well able to adapt to all sorts of things. And so hooray for the pigeon. I give them full credit for being part of this card because of that. They are can-do birds. They will survive no matter what we throw at them, and I think they're wonderful. Have a good look at a pigeon next time you see one. I know they're quite comedy birds in the way that they sort of strut around with their neck going backwards and forwards, but they are absolutely beautiful, fascinating to watch, especially when the male's doing his bizarre little courtship thing. I've got one of those in the the Knight of Cups, is it? Yeah, the busker card. There is a male pigeon strutting his stuff trying to woo a female pigeon in that card, but we'll come to that when we come to it. For now, that is why the pigeon is there, because they are omnipresent in our urban environments as well as our rural environments, and they're fab. Hooray for the pigeon. The butterfly, you might think, well, why is there a butterfly when there are no plants? Well, I wrote in the book, and should have checked this, but I didn't. The idea was that behind the walls of these terraced houses, there will be things growing. There will be things growing everywhere, and the butterfly shows us that within this rather barren-looking alleyway, people will still be growing things, and nature will force its way up. Now, if I'd have had more space or within the frame of the card, I could have shown that there would have been plants pushing up, but unfortunately, there aren't, because it just didn't work in terms of a design. So I did write in the book that behind the wall there would be flowers growing. Dandelions, roseberry, willow herb, the sort of plants that grow anywhere on waste ground, and the butterfly would find them. There is always somewhere for them to go. It was sort of important that I did show that there's boxes, there's rubbish here, there's a bin bag left on the thing, because these are the things that I was seeing that I had to include. They are real. Before I move on again, I was worried because of Schiffer, the publisher, choosing this card as the front of the box. I was worried, as I've mentioned before, that people that aren't from Britain would not know what these were, because they're very specific to England, and I can't speak for other areas of Britain, but these red brick Victorian terrace rows and rows and rows are very common here, especially in parts of England. I think pretty much every city or town has an area of them, but they might not be recognisable to somebody in Japan or Sweden or parts of America or wherever you happen to be. I don't know. So I was a bit worried that people would think, what is that? So let me know whether that did bother you at all, whether you were a bit flummoxed by it. I didn't have much choice in the matter. This was the card that Schiffer wanted to use because it is so radiant, and the colour that they wanted was yellow because they said it popped and it would be attract attention. So that's what we had to have, whether it really spoke to people or not in terms of the design elements, whether they understood it rather. What else did I want to say? Yes, the butterfly. Just before I go on to the other elements of what the sun means, and I'm running out of time, so very quickly, this year has been utterly appalling for me seeing bees and butterflies. Now, I am in a very suburban-y, because of circumstance, I am currently on a housing estate where people are concreting over their gardens, gravelling their gardens, putting down plastic grass. Gardens are disappearing at a rate of knots, but even so, compared to previous times that I have been here, the level of bees and butterflies has diminished drastically this year, and that's partly because of what people are doing, and as in getting rid of their gardens, partly because of the council spreading glyphosate or Roundup everywhere, including on the beach. Before I just move on, I got this out of the local paper. Celebs slam council for beach chemicals. Now, I think this is rather nauseating, because why could it just not be people who slam council? Why does it have to be taken notice of when somebody is famous? I find that absolutely revolting, that celebrities weighed in to question why it was happening. Well, I'm sure ordinary, in quotes, people did as well. Why it should matter more that somebody's from Dragon's Den or a political writer, I just don't know. But anyway, the council apparently takes more notice of those people, and the council has been spraying glyphosate on the beaches here, as well as on the verges and pretty much everywhere they can. So yeah, that would probably explain the decline in our pollinators. This is the Sun card from the Wild Spirit deck, the revamp of it, where I've got bees, which I talked about before in the Sun video for the Wild Spirit revamp. But there's no bees in this one, just the butterfly. But I think this is significant. But also, something that I haven't mentioned before is 5G. I could make a whole video on that, and I probably will, because it's something that I feel extremely passionate about. It's not only 5G, it's all the Wi-Fi signals that are absolutely everywhere. And of course, we are all beings of frequency, and especially bees who are having to navigate their way back to their hives or wherever they are living, their nests, wherever they're going. They rely on, they're very much I need to make another video on this so I know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to sound like I'm just waffling and haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, where I actually have. I'm just not prepared at the moment. I'm going to make a link, if I remember, to a video which is called Resonance Beings of Frequency, which covers this. But I think that the Wi-Fi and soon the 5G is having a massive impact on the pollinating insects. It's like the elephant in the room, which I'm going to have to come back to. But yeah, there's a combination of reasons. So I've included the butterfly. Coming back to the Sun card, I've included the butterfly because wherever we go, down an alleyway or whatever, there will always be growing things. There will always be flowers, and in the description they will be behind the walls or growing on the verges. Let's just move on quickly before I finish. I've got literally a couple of minutes now to just go through the main aspects of this card. It's warm, it's friendly, it's outgoing, it's radiant, as in it radiates outwards light and warmth and giving. It's optimistic, it's confident, and it's assured. These are all the things that I saw in this wonderful woman that was my inspiration. It shines. It's where we really shine, even in the darkness. And whereas the moon waxes and wanes, the sun is constant, it's reliable. There's something extremely it's just constant. There's something that isn't as transient and unreliable as the moon, and there's a lack of skepticism or cynicism or confusion. Everything is open, trusting, it's giving. And although both of those elements, the sun and the moon, are important, and that's something that we will come back to in the Temperance card, which brings balance between those two elements. So positive, but we have to have, with all the cards, the sun can be relentless, it can be full on, it can be in your face, it can be blinding, and it can be dangerously hot, or it can be life-giving, it can be gentle, it can be restorative, but it can burn us out. There is a moderation required in all things, and again, that comes back to the Temperance card. But I'm going to get cut off. Be quiet, Poppy. Lots of love to you. Thank you for watching. I'll be back very soon. Lots and lots of love. Bye.